Welcome back to CIA Declassified. The world outside these reinforced walls is obsessed with the blinding flash of the atom. But in here, power is measured by the steady, silent creep of a chemical reaction. The air is thick, tasting of sulfur and magnesium, a heavy, pressurized atmosphere where the only sound is the frantic scratching of a technician's pen against a clipboard. You are standing in a nondescript laboratory tucked away in the basement of a repurposed government building in Virginia. It is a space where the 1950s have settled in like a low-hanging fog, marked not by calendars, but by the slow oxidization of experimental alloys. As the midpoint of that restless decade passes, you find yourself leaning over a workbench, your eyes straining under the harsh yellow glow of an industrial lamp. You aren't just watching. You are holding a delay action vial, a piece of glass so thin it feels like a frozen breath. You feel the cool, clinical weight of the brass casing in your left hand as you carefully slide the vial into its housing. This is the heart of KUFIRE. It's a device. You aren't building a weapon for the front lines. You are building a mechanical alibi. If your steady hand falters, the magnesium inside will ignite with the intensity of a dying star. But if you succeed, this device will sit in a Soviet shipyard for 3 days before quietly erasing a cruiser's engine room. The tension in your shoulders is a physical burden as you move to the next station. You pick up a pair of precision tweezers and a standard pack of cigarettes. Your task is to insert a microcapsule of acid into the filter of a timer cigarette. One slip means a magnesium flare will ignite in your palm at 3,000 degrees. The lab is silent, save for the hum of the fume hood and the distant, muffled sound of traffic. A world that has no idea that the accidental warehouse fire in Budapest or the sudden engine failure of a cargo ship in the Baltic began right here, between your fingertips. You pick up a memo, marked with a red stripe, a document intended for a stay-behind agent in East Berlin. You aren't reading the text. You are feeling the texture of the paper. It feels slightly waxy, impregnated with a nitrate-based compound. You take a standard fountain pen, a KUFIRE modification, and write a coded sequence across the margin using a clear caustic ink. You watch as the paper begins to subtly discolor, the chemical fuse now armed. If this paper isn't neutralized in exactly 4 hours, it will spontaneously combust, leaving nothing but a fine, untraceable dust on the recipient's desk. Finally, you move to the testing chamber, a reinforced glass box where a small incendiary charge, designed to look like a lump of coal, is being prepped. As the technician next to you initiates the countdown, you realize the true power of KUFIRE. It isn't just about destruction, it's about the psychological mastery of the accident. When the charge ignites, there is no explosion, no flash of light, just a steady, terrifyingly hot blue flame that melts through 3 inches of steel as if it were butter. You aren't just making fire, you're making history disappear. This, ladies and gentlemen, is KUFIRE. Why the name? Records from the Technical Services Division indicate that KU was the standard CIA organizational prefix for administrative or specialized technical branches. Fire was a literal, unvarnished designation for the department's primary medium. While other branches handled KU Bark for headquarters or KU Cage for overseas paramilitary support, KUFIRE was the internal shorthand for the masters of thermal sabotage and incendiary tradecraft. To grasp the white-hot core of the burning trace, we must sift through the charred remains of the CIA's most flammable secrets. KUFIRE was the primary CIA branch responsible for specialized incendiary and explosive sabotage tools. The department developed incendiary cigarettes, which used an acid corrosion timer to delay ignition for up to 12 hours. KUFIRE technicians created self-destructing paper that could be triggered by light, heat, or specific chemical markers. The department utilized thermite mixtures capable of melting through heavy-duty file safes in under 60 seconds. KUFIRE developed pocket incendiaries disguised as standard fountain pens and pocket watches. The branch provided sabotage kits to stay behind networks in Europe during the early Cold War. KUFIRE engineers developed a silent match that ignited without the characteristic scritch sound of sulfur odor. The department tested incendiary coal designed to be shoveled into the boilers of steamships and locomotives. KUFIRE developed chemical delay fuses that were virtually undetectable by X-ray or physical inspection. The branch created micro-incendiary pellets for disabling sensitive electronic relay switches. KUFIRE utilized napalm B and specialized low-volume canisters for localized sabotage. The department created crumbling tablets that, when added to gasoline, would cause an engine to seize and catch fire after 30 miles of driving. KUFIRE experimented with atmospheric igniters that would trigger upon reaching a specific altitude. The branch developed invisible incendiary ink for writing messages that would burn the paper when exposed to a specific light frequency. KUFIRE technicians created delayed action firebombs used to destroy sensitive radar installations without alerting guards. The department maintained a burn lab at the CIA facility in Camp Perry. KUFIRE developed self-igniting briefcases for couriers carrying high-level classified material. The branch tested the use of white phosphorus for rapid document destruction and embassy emergencies. KUFIRE developed thermite grenades disguised as standard canisters of shaving cream. The department created acid release timers that were silent and left no electronic footprint. KUFIRE engineers worked on low-temperature incendiaries designed to start fires that look like electrical shorts. The branch developed incendiary splatter charges that would spread fire across a large area after using minimal explosive force. KUFIRE provided technical support for Operation PB Success in Guatemala. I have a whole episode on PB Success as well. The department created slow burn fuses that produced zero smoke and zero visible light. KUFIRE developed magnesium ribbons for precision cutting of heavy metal hinges. The branch experimented with gelatinized gasoline for use in clandestine arson operations. KUFIRE technicians developed heat-sensitive glues that would fail and ignite when a machine reached operating temperature. The department created miniature detonators that could be hidden inside the heel of a dress shoe. KUFIRE utilized exothermic reactions that required no oxygen to burn, allowing for underwater sabotage. The branch developed potassium permanganate igniters, PERMANGANATE igniters, for use in humid or tropical environments. KUFIRE tested fire-starting dust that could be blown into a ventilation system. The department created incendiary light bulbs that would start a fire the moment the switch was flipped. KUFIRE engineers developed nitroglycerin-based incendiary paste for high adhesion sabotage. The branch produced arson manuals for foreign revolutionary groups aligned with U.S. interest. KUFIRE developed self-destructing film for spy cameras. The department created water-activated igniters for use in rainy conditions or maritime sabotage. KUFIRE technicians developed smokeless incendiary pellets for use in urban environments. The branch experimented with binary incendiaries where two harmless liquids became a fire starter when mixed. KUFIRE developed precision blow torches no larger than a cigar. The department monitored Soviet VBR incendiary developments to ensure technical parity. KUFIRE utilized chemical clocks that could be set for months in advance. The branch created incendiary envelopes that would ignite if opened by anyone other than the intended recipient. KUFIRE developed thermal lance technology for penetrating thick vault doors. The department provided E&E, escape and evasion, kits with miniature fire starting tools. KUFIRE technicians developed delayed ignition systems for aircraft fuel tanks. The branch tested incendiary aerosols for wide area denial. KUFIRE developed microthermite dots for destroying silicon chips. The department created fire-resistant wallets for couriers that would only incinerate the contents upon a specific trigger. KUFIRE experimented with optical igniters triggered by a flashbulb. The branch developed corrosive incendiaries that would eat through metal before igniting. Technicians mapped the thermal vulnerability of major Soviet industrial sites. The department created incendiary spikes that could be hammered into wooden structures. KUFIRE developed flash paper used for quick communication in high-risk zones. The branch utilized remote-controlled igniters as early as the late 1950s. The declassification of KUFIRE documents reveals a department that prioritized plausible deniability above all else. A declassified internal CIA Technical Service Division memo dated 1954. FIRE is the only intelligence agent that never talks back under interrogation. A declassified project review board briefing. The goal of KUFIRE is to ensure that by the time the fire department arrives, the history of the event has already been deleted. A declassified CIA sabotage manual, the 1959 edition. Sabotage is the art of making an accident look inevitable. A declassified National Security Council directive on covert infrastructure. The thermal erasure of sensitive assets is a mandatory requirement for all stay-behind operations. And a declassified KUFIRE lead chemist report dated 1961, but unfortunately, we don't get to know who the lead chemist was. His name's redacted. We are not building bombs. We are building chemical clocks that end in silence. And a declassified CIA technical brief dated 1957. Our technical ability to initiate spontaneous combustion at a distance is the cornerstone of the deniable sabotage program. End quote. Within the declassified files for KUFIRE, the chemical formulation appendix is almost entirely purged, specifically a section titled Series 700, Exotic Catalysts for Spontaneous Atmospheric Ignition. It's missing roughly 140 pages of text. These are redacted under Exemption B1 for national security and Exemption B3 for CIA statutory secrecy. I suspect these pages detail chemical formulas that can trigger a fire using only the moisture in the air or specific trace gases. Formulas so simple and effective they could be used by anyone if leaked. I speculate that these redactions cover biological incendiaries, fungal or bacterial agents designed to cause rapid heat-producing decay in specific crops or materials. Furthermore, I believe the personal sanitization section is redacted because it involves the cleanup protocols for CIA agents who were accidentally exposed to these volatile chemicals in the field and could not be taken to civilian hospitals. And I'm not the only one with theories. When things burn, the smoke often obscures the truth. There is the Reich-Stag refined theory. It's a persistent one that suggests that KUFIRE tools were used to frame political dissidents by starting controlled fires in foreign government buildings that appeared to be the result of faulty wiring. Then there's the JFK evidence speculation. Some think that KUFIRE was self-destructing chemicals were actually used to sanitize certain forensic materials following the Kennedy assassination to ensure no trace of specific ballistics could be found. And then there is the urban cleansing conspiracy theory. Conspiracy enthusiasts suggest that KUFIRE tested atmospheric deniers in certain U.S. cities during the unrest of the late 1960s, chemicals that would prevent fires from being put out by standard water-based extinguishers. Was KUFIRE a success? Tactically, it was a perfect smokescreen. KUFIRE was an overwhelming success because it mastered the medium of denial. In an era where physical evidence was the only way to prove covert action, fire was the ultimate eraser. The department's ability to create accidental ignition sources meant that the CIA could conduct high-stakes sabotage without ever triggering a diplomatic incident. The incendiary cigarette alone allowed agents to be miles away before a fire even started, providing the perfect alibi. The department provided a suite of tools that were reliable, portable, and, most importantly, looked like trash once they had functioned. The tactical success also extended to the material science of espionage. By creating paper and film that destroyed itself, KUFIRE eliminated the capture risk for many high-level assets. If an agent was caught, the evidence was already gone. The tactical flexibility allowed for more aggressive operations in hard target environments like Moscow or Hanoi. The tactical playbook written by KUFIRE, the logic of thermal erasure, remains a fundamental part of covert operations today. Strategically, it was the great neutralizer. The department allowed the U.S. to project power without the risk of war. By sabotaging Soviet industrial capacity through industrial accidents, the U.S. could slow the progress of the Soviet war machine without ever firing a shot. KUFIRE made every Soviet factory owner and military commander paranoid. They could never be sure if a fire was a stroke of bad luck or a stroke of CIA genius. This created a strategic friction that hampered Soviet logistics for decades. Furthermore, the breakthroughs in chemical timing and exothermic energy gave the U.S. a strategic edge in stay-behind planning. If Europe had been invaded, KUFIRE tools would have turned every occupied city into a deniable furnace for the invaders. The department ensured that even in defeat, the U.S. could deny the enemy the spoils of war through total thermal destruction of infrastructure. It was the strategic scorched earth policy, but delivered with the precision of a CIA chemist. The breakthroughs of KUFIRE are the silent engines of our modern world. Precision thermite application. These ultra-high heat mixtures were the result of KUFIRE and its need to melt through high-security safes without using noisy explosives. Today, humanity applies this technology through modern safe disposal protocols where thermite is used to instantly weld shut or destroy dangerous ordnance. The military applies this through anti-material charges used to disable heavy artillery or vehicles during a retreat. The intelligence community utilizes this technology for the emergency destruction of server racks and hard drives in embassies that are about to be overrun, ensuring that digital data is vaporized into molten slag. Chemical delay fuses. This technology emerged from the requirement for deniable alibis, where a fire had to start hours or days after an agent had left the scene. Today, humanity applies this through controlled release agriculture, where fertilizers and pesticides are encased in chemical shells that dissolve at a specific rate. The military applies this through sea mines and deep sea sensors that only activate after months of dormancy. The intelligence community utilizes it for time-delayed technical surveillance, where a listening device's power source is only unlocked by a chemical corrosive weeks after it has been planted to avoid initial sweeps. Material degradation science pioneered the creation of self-destructing paper and film by altering the molecular stability of the material itself. Today, humanity applies this through biodegradable plastics, using the same logic of programmed failure to reduce environmental waste. The military applies this through transient electronics that dissolve when exposed to water or high heat to prevent enemy capture. The intelligence community utilizes it for one-time use logistics, creating containers that disintegrate after a mission to ensure no physical trail of a drop site can be found by local police. And micro-incendiary igniters. The development of miniature, high-reliability fire starters like the incendiary cigarette led to breakthroughs in small-scale ignition. Today, humanity applies this through automotive airbag inflators, which require a micro-incendiary charge to trigger a gas release in milliseconds. The military applies this through microsatellite deorbiting systems using tiny incendiary charges to burn up sensitive hardware upon mission completion. The intelligence community utilizes this for remote document sanitization, where a small charge hidden in a filing cabinet can be triggered via a cellular signal to incinerate a specific folder. KUFIRE stands as a stark reminder that in the world of intelligence, fire isn't just a force of nature. It's a specialized tool of bureaucracy. It was a department that took the most primal human discovery and refined it into a clinical laboratory-grade instrument of denial. The burning trace was more than just a method of destruction. It was a philosophy that stated that the only way to truly keep a secret was to return to its basic atomic components. As we look back at the incendiary cigarettes and the self-destructing documents, we see the origin of our modern obsession with data sanitization. The technicians of KUFIRE were the first to understand that in the information age, the most valuable thing you can own is the ability to make information vanish. They were the architects of the accidental history, the men who ensured that the official record remained as clean and unblemished as a freshly swept floor, even if the room beneath it was still smoldering. Ultimately, the legacy of the department is found in the silence that follows the flame. We live in a world built on the breakthroughs of these thermal engineers, where the same chemistry that sabotaged a Soviet train now keeps your car safe or grows your food. KUFIRE taught us that while truth may be eternal, the evidence of it is remarkably flammable. The department may have officially closed its doors, but as long as there are secrets that need to disappear, someone, somewhere, will always be looking for a match. Don't smoke the evidence unless you're prepared to become part of the ash. A cigarette is just a countdown timer that smells like a bad habit. If your memo starts smoking early, it's time for a career change. And remember, there is no such thing as a cold case if you use enough thermite. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine Project Bee Sting, a non-lethal directed energy weapon used for crowd dispersal near sensitive embassies. We'll look at the active denial system, the invisible wall of heat, and the reality of a weapon that makes you run without ever leaving a mark. Join us next time for the silent stun. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.